Welcome to yet another tier maker video. This time we're going to be covering my favorite all-time video game. We're going retro with this one, people. This time we're looking at Super Mario RPG, The Legend of the Seven Stars. A mouthful, I know. One of the best games ever made. Best Mario game, in my honest opinion. Best RPG game I've ever played. My honest opinion, keeps it simple yet introduces complex mechanics, complex item system, a fun combat system, mixed with overall great sound design, great boss design, and a fun party to manage. Let's get into how we're going to be ranking things. The S tier is our absolute favorite bosses in the game, the most fun, the best music, the best design, and overall the most enjoyable experiences to go against, as well as a good deal of difficulty and fairness. A, going to be your good designed bosses, going to be your bosses that are fun to fight against, but maybe there's one little quirk about them that's a little frustrating, or perhaps their design's a little wonky. Perfectly fine. B tier is going to be our people that are just a tick above average. Nothing terribly special, but there's a lot of redeeming qualities. Maybe they have great music, but the mechanics are a little wonky. Things of that nature. C tier, slightly below average. There's a lot to like, but there's also a lot to dislike. D tier. They're not going to be that good in terms of redeeming qualities, but there is something about them that's good. For the most part, we're going to have trouble knocking music, I think, because for the most part, it's great. Superb, even. Collaboration with Square and with Nintendo themselves, just an all-around masterpiece in sound design. Going down to F tier is going to be your frustrating people to fight, your difficult bosses mixed with their design's a little weird. Maybe their attacks are hard, if not nearly impossible to dodge. Well, not dodge, but block. A couple factors are going to go into someone getting into the F tier. Don't know, don't remember. Sadly, I went through a list looking at names, because names are some of the things I don't really know a lot on these characters. They don't go out of their way to give you a name for a lot of these people. They don't beat you over the head with it, I guess. If you want to know them, you can. We're actually going to get into the list here. Starting with the Axum Rangers. Very obvious comparison to be made to the Power Rangers. That's what they wanted. The boss fight itself is engaging because each individual ranger offers their own skill set and their own HP and their own damage, their own personalities. So you have to decide. It might take you a few times of fighting them to decide who to prioritize. So they have a strategy involved. And of course, you've got your guy there at the back that's masterminding it all, the dangerous killer back there in the back that'll wipe you quick. But if you focus each of the individual axioms in a certain way, then you're going to find yourself having a better time. I couldn't tell you right now which ones I would focus down. I would probably just try to take out the less tanky ones, perhaps the leader and maybe like the pink girl. She might have healing. I can't remember exactly. It's been a few years since I played, and I need to play again soon, actually, because this game, in my opinion, is an absolute masterpiece that has not been replicated since. I wish they would remaster this game, but do not, for the love of God, do not touch the music. If you remaster this game, Nintendo, or whoever has the rights to this game these days, do not touch the music. You can add a little bit more of your own flavor if you want, but as far as boss fights and areas specifically, unless you add more things, do not touch the music. It is sacred. The Axum Rangers themselves, though, great music. The fight's fun. The characters are cool. They give you a little bit of a throwback. And the stakes are high here. You're like, oh man, we really fought our way to these guys. Overall, I think these guys are going to be slightly above average. I think there are better boss fights, and I think there are less trial and error boss fights. Though you can one-shot any of the bosses in this game, I think. But your results may vary. This game can be difficult depending on how well you can block and how well you manage your items and what party you go into fights with. Bellamy or Bellome. I do not know which is the correct way to say it. You encounter him a few times in combat. It's pretty. He's got a unique mechanic where he like replicates your teammates and like makes you fight him in that regard. His design is kind of cool. He's kind of terrifying when you think about it, but he's overall pretty cool. I like the animations of them like wiggling back and forth. All of the it's all so just lovable and great. But off the top of my head, his music isn't coming to me, so that means it's probably not amongst my absolute favorites for music. So I'm gonna have to put Bellamy a little lower than Axum, probably in general, just because usually a boss that repeats is usually going to be a little bit lower in quality because they're kind of recycled content. In my opinion, there is going to be an exception on this list, and I'll tell you that when that comes up. Bellamy, though, I think is perfectly fine, and any one of these bosses would probably be greatly ranked if they were put in any other game. But in comparison to his peers, Bellamy or Bellome is going to go into the middle range in terms of bosses in the game for me. Birdo. I don't know if this is no. This is definitely not the first time you see Birdo because obviously Super Mario or Mario Brothers 2, right? You see her, she shoots the eggs at you. You gotta grab them and chuck them at her head. But Birdo is fun because is Birdo optional? By the way, let me look at my list here. Is Birdo? Are you optional? My dear person, Birdo. Da 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 da. Richter. Doesn't say. I'm not sure if you have to fight her or not. Perhaps you do. Maybe you do. But her fight is fun because you see her come out of that. And you're like, oh, we know who that is. But other than that, I love the castle, by the way, where Valentina and everyone are, and Dodo and everything. I'm kind of sad that Dodo is not on the list because I love Dodo personally. We're just gonna lump Dodo into the Valentina camp. Birdo, we're gonna have to put just because the fight is pretty brief. Like you don't necessarily want a fight that's drawn out forever because there's probably gonna be many reasons you don't want that. But Birdo, in my estimation, as far as the fights go in this particular game, I love the aesthetic of the fight. I love the aesthetic of Birdo in general, but Birdo's gonna go into the D tier for me, not the absolute worst. I don't. It's gonna be hard for me to put people here, to be honest. You sir, are one of Smithy's people. What is your name, my friend? You are named Director. You are a high-ranking member of the Smithy gang and the second strongest supervisor in the assembly line. So you're one of the last people we fight before Smithy, correct? So you're going to be very important. If I remember right, your fight is not like particularly scary though. Except for the Smithy fight itself, I think most of the fights in the factory itself are not quite as high a tier as most of the outer boss fights. So when it's going to come to him, and if we have the manager on here, we do. He's down there towards the bottom. I think these guys are going to also go into D tier just because they're kind of samey, and to be honest with you, I don't think they're standouts. They don't have much personality in their own right. They're just linked to Smithy. I think you kind of could have put Smithy and all of his people in the same range. Clerk is going to be a similar thing there too. In fact, we're just going to go ahead and put them all there because we're not going to really deal with them much as we go along. Bowser. Bowser as a villain, you fight, he's like the first boss that you fight, being on top of the chandeliers, engaging in classic combat with Bowser. The music is spectacular. Some of the best music in any game of all time is that first Bowser fight. And then the guy straight up becomes your bro later and is probably the most fun character you can play with. Bowser is incredible. One of the few Mario games, if not the only one, where Bowser becomes your ally. I can't remember if that's particularly true or not. But Bowser's dialogue with Mario is hilarious. His dialogue in general is hilarious. They always find, in games where they give Bowser more personality, he's usually a great character. When he's just an evil, rawr, fire breather, he's not quite as fun. But when they give him a little bit more freedom to be Bowser and to be an actual antagonist and then a Protagonist, he's absolutely S tier. He's transcendental. He He transcends all the boundaries of what it means to be a villain, but also a protagonist in this case. He's diverse. S tier for Bowser. Going on to what is your name? I remember your fight well, my friend, but what is your name? What is your name, sir? You are Boyer. Couldn't remember that for a million years. This fight is awesome because you're in the middle of combat and all feels like it's going to go downhill, and then in comes Gino, the absolute madman himself, making his way to the fight. This fight's got cinematography. It cuts out and shows you what's happening. He's making his way up the mountain, getting through the arrows. The music here is also excellent. The fight has a unique aesthetic where he's shooting the arrows and he's taking away your ability to hit certain buttons. What a cool mechanic that is. And the guy is a freaking bow. He just is a bow, and he shoots like living arrows. He's got like the freaking Slim Jim from Dave Mirra hairstyle. He's crazy. His music's awesome. And I think overall the aesthetics and the fun cinematography and getting Gino involved here, Boyer's going to go A tier. I didn't even know the guy's name coming into this, but he's going A tier. The name isn't the important part. The mechanics and the memorability. I think a lot of these fights are getting placed based on their memorability in my mind. Sorry, I don't have multiple personality disorder. That's not something that I have, so that's not a fair thing to say is minds. Boyer, in my opinion, great music, great atmosphere overall, fun fight. He goes up to the A tier. We have our cake. What is his name? Bunt? Is his name Bunt? Makes me think of, yeah, his name's Bunt. Makes me think of Game Grumps playthrough of Pokemon with the Beedrill. We won't get into that. Bunt. This one's fun because you're fighting you're fighting the chefs, and they're like, you're not gonna attack the cake, and the whole time the cake's like moving, and he's like, what is this? You're speaking in like their maybe politically incorrect these days accents, but it's funny, it's hilarious. You know, Booster's involved in it all as well, the Peach wedding, and then you've got the hilarity after with the Bowser potentially kissing Mario and hilarious things like that. But having said that, the fight itself, knocking out all the candles, it can be a little frustrating. This one can be a little bit trial and error-y if you just think you deal raw damage, not necessarily. The fun stages and everything are good to this, and the music, from what I remember, is good, but I don't think it's among the top tier. Although there's a lot of hijinks that ensues before and after, and even during. I think it elevates it above these fights here, and we're gonna consider these to be one fight. These three guys, because in my opinion, they are not different enough to warrant their own positions on the list. We're going to put Bunt a step above them, put them with Balome. Moving on to the next people, also in the Smithy region. I'm going to have a hard time giving these guys an honest review. Again, I need a name for this guy. This guy is named Cloaker. And he fights with Earthlink, the Snake, and he fights with Domino. Or the Mad Adder, basically. The Mad Adder is a great name, by the way. And Domino. We're going to consider them one fight as well. I think the Snake is fun. It's a fun... The aesthetics of them and their fight is superior to the manager-director series of people here. And I think that their aesthetic is fun, and they are much more threatening in my eyes. So we're going to go ahead and put them all, as we're going to lump them together as well. We're going to lump them into the C tier. There's nothing too crazy about them. They're not different. They're included in a fight together. So I'd have trouble separating them on a basis like that. Although, you know what? I'm going to put the Mad Adder above just because his name is cool and he's a freaking cobra, bro. How could you not? Mad Adder gets elevated because of that. Countdown. Countdown can be one of the most intimidating just because he's counting down, for Lord's sake. He's scary. He's intimidating. He's got the aspect of you don't quite know what to do, but at the same time you can kind of guess. It's got to do with his bells and everything, that you need to prioritize certain things. You don't want his bells going off, so you're probably going to want to damage him. But I think that Countdown is a fun boss, but also an intimidating boss. Good music here as well. I think he gets up here with the Mad Adder territory. I don't have much else to say. just because the whole factory area is not my favorite. Like I said earlier, it's not the absolute best of RPG. I think everything leading up to it and then the smithy fight itself are some of the best parts of the game. Not the factory itself, though, in my opinion. Rocco, how can you not love the guy? He's a lovable bandit. You know, trying to catch him in that first area is fun and engaging. You get to meet Mallow, and then you just there's so many good memories with the early fight, and then even the later fights, his abilities are fun. He reaches into the bag, and he pocket sands you in the face and tries to explode you, and he gets better. His dialogue is funny. His music is excellent. I can think of it now, the little noise that it makes. Well, it's like the wow. Yeah, I can't replicate it, but everything about this guy is cool. He's a freaking basically like a dinosaurized Yoshi, and he wears a cool hat, and he's rude but also funny. Rocco is going to go up here with Bowser in my estimation. S tier. Culex, now let me hit you with something here. He's optional completely, and most people don't even know he exists unless they're diehard fans. Obviously, this is a nod to the Square portion of the development, and it's completely fair to put an optional boss because it's not intrusive. But if you go fight him, he's probably the hardest boss in the game for sure. So that being said, adding an extra layer of difficulty and a little bit of mysticism is fun. But I don't think I can put him. I'm gonna put him above average, just because he's mysterious, and if you somehow stumbled upon him, it would be a mind-blowing experience, and that alone would be worth it in my estimation. The boss fight is cool. The music, it's not quite my cup of tea. I was never a big Square guy in any regards for the most part, so the nostalgia portion or the coolness factor is lost on me a little bit, but I understand it. I truly do. That's why I'm going to put him into the B tier, but I don't think he deserves to usurp the Boyer tier. I don't think he deserves to get into Croco Bowser for certain, but his memorability has outlasted the test of time. He's still one of the most respected boss fights in any game in terms of difficulty in their game, so he's going to go to B tier for me. The dragon, the fire-breathing dragon boy, I don't know your name, so again, we're going to go find your name. You are just the Sar Dragon. You're in the volcano, obviously. Now, do you just become... he's not even on the list. Okay, we don't have to worry about it then. Right? No, he's on the list. Okay, so does he, when you defeat him, right, he becomes the Bone Boy. Where are you on the list, my bony friend? Excuse me, friend. Why are you not on my list, my dear Bone? There you are. You're right below him. What an embarrassment. Zomboni, also a great name, and he's a zombie dragon. The dragon portion of the fight, in my personal opinion, is better than the final portion of the fight, just because the dragon's kind of cool. He kind of gives me like a Donkey Kong 64 vibe of like the weirdly big eye aesthetic over the other small eye aesthetic. It looks like he got punched in the eye and one swelled up. I like his design. Fire versus fire, you got your Mario mechanics and all that. If you could, by the way, if you could swap out Mario as one of the playable people, I would probably do it sometimes, because there's a lot of utility. You got Peach, who is an incredible healer. You have Bowser, who's your tank and also deals wild damage. Then you've got your Genos, who are also utility, and he's also just a cool character. You know, they're, in my estimation, you could put almost any character above Mario a lot of the time. I love Mario. He's great. He's fun. Jumping, hammers, all that great stuff. Fireballs. Good guy. I think you could occasionally sub out Mario. But anyway, fire versus fire with our Sar Dragon here. I think he's aesthetically cool. I like the guy. We're going to put him in B tier. Put him in that above average range, but he doesn't quite stand out. I think, looking at my list again, in comparison to these, I think the Axum Rangers are better than all of the four in this tier, so we're going to elevate them to A tier status. We're gonna go find our bone dragon boy. And again, I like it slightly less than the Sar Dragon. Zomboni is a great name, and I wish I could elevate it just based on the name itself. But, and again, it's also kind of mind-blowing. You're like, oh man, we did it. That fight wasn't too horrible. And then you're like, ah, there's another one. I respect that a great deal when they hit you with the swerve at the end there. Oh man, you've got your sword lord. Listen, I'm not good with names. This is Exor. This one is a pretty tough fight and aesthetically pleasing as well, and it's a great feeling to finally fight the guy that initially messes everything up and comes down. Messes with the castle, makes it look real cool though, I'll give it that. And the fight is fun, the music is fun, hitting the eyeballs, you gotta make sure you get them eyeballs knocked out at all times. It's a dangerous battle. You've got the top, you got the hilt. Everything's trying to kill you on this sword. This sword, except for the blade itself, funny enough, everything's trying to kill you on this guy. I think he's an overall fun dude. I think he goes slightly above just because of his domineering presence over the entire portion of the game until you've beaten him. He's up there, man. Like, he's constantly in your purview. He's constantly a threat. You're like, what's going to happen when I fight that guy? Or do I fight that guy? Is he even evil? I don't know. But you do fight him, and he's a good time. I think he goes into the A tier. Music, fun fight, and a lot of gravitas. A lot on the line when you fight the guy. We got the Smelter. What's the Smelter's name? If his name's just Smelter, I'm going to be pretty upset. We've gone the wrong way again. What is your name, sir? Gunyolk. You are present with one of the other people, are you not? Smithy Gang. Factory Chief. I think you're aesthetically kind of interesting, but you're also kind of an abomination. So in my estimation, I'm going to elevate you above your people here into this, just the slightly below average tier. But again, when we're talking about areas in the game that I'm not a huge fan of, and by the way, all of the bosses and all of the music is great in this game. I'm comparing them against each other. I'm not comparing them to anything else. Again, all of these characters are fun, and all of them are very enjoyable to fight against and all of that stuff. I am just basing this entirely against each other here. So I'm not throwing much shade at all of these guys where it's at all possible. And let me be clear, the F tier is probably going to see no characters. So keep that in mind. We've got one of our people here. Do we have both? We have both. These guys, in my estimation, are very fun. They are in the booster region. I find great enjoyment out of their fight. They are actually both unique. This guy is way more annoying. What is his name? I couldn't tell you. His name, my friends, is their names. They should be together on this list, I would presume. They are Great Guy and Knife Guy. Great Guy, also a good name. It's not G-R-E-A-T, it's G-R-A-T-E. Pretty funny. Great Guy here. He grates on you too. That's kind of the point. He's a troll. He isn't just your straight up DPS like Knife Guy. Is he supposed to be like Nice Guy and Great Guy? Is that the joke? I like it. I respect it a lot. Great Guy, he's more focused on messing you up, putting your people to sleep. I don't respect that style of play. Excuse me? How did I grab a hold of you? What? I don't know how that happened. Either way, we're going to put him in the B tier just because he's a part of a fun fight and he's a part of a very fun part of the game. And I think the music for this fight, again, is great. Anytime there's two bosses together that are both very unique and feel very much their own enemy, I'm a big fan of that. And then Knife Guy, we're actually going to elevate above that into the A tier. My only reason for saying so is I like an enemy that just goes at you, that just tries to kill you straight up. And again, they're both going to be rated on the same other areas, but I respect someone that is going to go into a straight up DPS fight with you. I respect that a lot. Who are you? I don't think you're on this list at all. I don't know who you are. I'm assuming I would know who you are if I should know who you are. Oh, you're the factory chief. He's a purple ninja. So you're the one that fights with Gun Yoke. Okay. That makes way more sense because none of the others were named the factory chief. I have no memory of what you do. So honestly, we're going to put you in the don't know, don't remember tier. I remember these guys. I remember Gun Yoke specifically. But him, I have no memory of what he does or what his deal is. Hammer Bros. This is like the early fight where you're like, oh man, we really got to actually put effort into this. This is the first one where they kind of give you a reality check. And of course, you beat him and you get your cool hammer and whatnot. It's definitely worth investing in it. Mario can only punch and jump at this point. This is where he gets his signature hammer. I think they debated not even giving Mario a hammer in this game, so they thought maybe it'd be too violent for him to bonk people. Didn't turn out to be the case, thank the heavens. They didn't go with some other weird approach. But the Hammer Bros, they got early precedent. They got like first true test precedent. If these guys were later in the game, they probably would change how they work, but they're not later in the game. So I've got a lot of respect for where they take place in the story. So I'm going to put them in the A tier. Good music again. All of these have great music. If you go and listen, if you're looking for an OST to an old school game that maybe you aren't already familiar with, this is the one right here. Look up the Super Mario RPG OST. You will not, which is original soundtrack for those that don't know, I'm assuming. But the original soundtrack to this game is glorious, and I would highly recommend. Now this guy, I thought at first was just the basic enemy, and I was like, why is he on the boss list? But after looking over the list, this is Jaeger or Jagger. He's like the leader of like the Smithy gang. After he's first seen leading Bowser's troop. So I have a lot of respect for him because he's in Bowser's troop, but I don't really remember fighting him. So again, he's gonna have to go into the don't know or don't remember. Maybe I should have the respect to put these guys in that tier as well, but I don't. I just don't like him that much. I remember not liking him that much. I don't remember what my opinions on these guys were at the time, so I'm not going to put them there. We've got our little man here. Now this is Jinx. Jinx is the martial arts master. That's right. You see whenever you get there, you're like, oh man, this guy's going to be a wimp. The dojo is one of my favorite parts in any game like this. Paper Mario, absolutely adore the dojo. It's one of my favorite parts of Paper Mario. And it's one of my favorite parts of this game too. You're like, oh, this guy won't be that tough. And then he's freaking like this speed of lightning, dude. The guy doesn't play around. This guy is a great time, and in my estimation is A tier worthy. Now, at first you may have thought, oh man, this is going to be kind of a lower weighted list. Not necessarily. We got a lot of heavy hitters still to go on this list, so do not go anywhere. We've got our Shark Boy. His name is Johnny, right? Yeah, his name is Johnny. Johnny is one of my absolute favorite bosses, underrated in my estimation. He's got a lot of respect for you. He understands how powerful you are, and he has a freaking toe-to-toe with Mario. He's like, you know what? You're the captain. I'm the captain. Let's settle this between men. Let's have a gentleman's agreement here, and we're going to fight this out. I absolutely adore that. And I love the whole aesthetic of the sunken ship. The music is good down there. It's a little spooky. The whole sunken ship aesthetic is cool. You've got your pearls, little code that you put in. I just know it now, so I don't have to go find the clues these days. But it's still just such a fun place to be. You've got your star. Anytime you get a star in this game, it's meant for you to get easy level ups. That's cool. That's fun. It's got one of the most funs in the game. Most fun stars in the game of knocking out all the freaking starfish with it. Ironic now that I think about it. The Johnny fight is one of my favorite fights in the game. Again, any fight that like introduces unique mechanics, kind of like the Boyer fight. Boyer I can't quite put up there just because his character design is a little bit wonky to me. Johnny is awesome. One of my favorite character designs in any Mario game. He's just like he's like a One Piece character, dude. Like, I love the guy. He's awesome. He's got great music. He has a fun mechanic. He's respectful of Mario. He says, you know what? We're going to fight this out, gentleman style. We're going to battle. We've got the squid, the blooper. What is your name in the game, though? You were King Calamari. Again, the names in this game are incredible. Everything about this game's incredible. This fight, as far as the sunken ship goes, is nowhere near the caliber of the Johnny fight. But I do think that it has its charms, to where he kind of like takes away your people for a little bit and then he chucks them back out. It has fun mechanics, and it has the fun idea of you beat him up a bit and then they back up and then you move forward and you keep pressing the issue, you keep fighting, and then you eventually win, and you win, and then it clears him out of there and you're like, oh, that's darn right. But I don't think he's not on the level of the Johnny fight. And I think we're going to just put him right here. Now again, if we took some of the fluff out of here, like your duplicates that I just lumped together, this list is going to probably look a little bit more balanced, but right now it looks a little bit weird at the present moment because the middle looks like it's a little lighter than it should be. Not quite, but oh, I love this guy. What is your name though, sir? Your name is Mac. Mac I enjoy a lot because you get here and you're like, oh, I'm going to fight the big sword. But now you fight this guy right here. He's a little weird. This is one of the early instances of me learning what the pick-me-up was used for. A fun item and a fun way of doing that system. And then you occasionally get your freebies. Oh, man, nothing better than using a pick-me-up and getting a freebie out of it. Oh, that's a great feeling. And eventually you get to the point where Peach is overpowered as all get out for a healer, and she can just keep bringing you back and healing you and doing all kinds of great stuff for you overall, as long as you have the required items to do so. She's not involved in this fight, though. You don't have her as a party member yet. But when the Shy Guys are ravaging the town, and you're going around and there's like the chaotic music happening, and you're trying to get it back. Pardon the hiccups here. You're trying to take the city back. Then you get in there and you're like, you know what? Let's put a stop to this right now. And you fight the guy and he's ba-da. Kind of puts Mario to the test in the jumping skill front, because a lot of this is there on pogo sticks and all that. The aesthetic is fun. After you beat this guy, you get access to some of the best stuff in the game. I think he's going to go B tier, slightly above average, just because the fight itself, there's not a lot mechanically that's super interesting about the fight. Stuff leading up to it, the scenery itself, and his design is cool. A bouncy sword is an interesting concept, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's on the level of these guys up here. Looking at Knife Guy, you know, I gotta pull Knife Guy back down to be with his partner. Great guy. I don't think he's deserving of this tier after looking at how weighty we're starting to make it there. Perhaps Squidman needs to come down as well. I'm not fully decided on that one yet. We'll see how that goes at the end. We've got Magic Koopa, correct? Do you fight alongside somebody, my dear friend Magic Koopa? Magic Koopa, you are high-ranking member in the Koopa Troop. He is the archenemy of Yoshi. Really? I guess it makes sense. Magic Koopa, in general, I like them like so-so. I don't have a huge affinity or dislike of them. I think they're going to go slightly below average tier. I don't think there's anything too crazy great about them. Now we're starting to a little more resemble a better curve here. And again, you're thinking, it's a little bottom heavy. Not really. There's no one in the F tier. And the S and D tier are equal. So, and these three are all at least above average when you look at the overall list. So really, it's actually top heavy, and since I kind of just included these guys together, that's even less that you would put down there in that lower tier. So far, we're very... That's what happened. You came back. Get back here with your friends. You, Piranha Fight. This again is an example of difficulty and trying to decide which target to prioritize. Do you have a name besides Piranha? You probably do. Mega Smilax and Smilaxes. Again, the naming stuff in this game is next level. I got a lot of respect for it. Getting to this guy is fun. Fighting the piranhas themselves, though, it's not the best thing in the world, but I think that we're going to put it in B tier just because of the aesthetic and the classic fight. And this is kind of one of the this is one of the few times that piranhas are this exposed and they're put together like this. You don't really see a lot of branching piranha plant. Like PD Piranha isn't, he's just one plant. Then the pipe piranhas are just one piranha. You don't really get to see their origin point like this, and that's pretty fun. You like water these guys come up from like saplings basically. It's a fun idea and not really ever touched upon again, sadly. Like a lot of the great ideas used in this game, it doesn't really come back again, which is sad. Now, my boy here, the bombman, what is your name? I know your name. I should know your name, but I don't. Sadly. Punchinello! This guy's fun because he pulls bombs out of his face. And you're like, oh man, what's gonna happen? He just keeps getting a progressively bigger bomb. And you're like, oh lord, how long can we sustain a fight like this? And eventually he just freaking blows himself up trying to take you out at the end. His fight's fun. He has fun mechanics. He's enjoyable to fight overall. He's going to go into the A tier up here. I enjoy the caverns. A lot of people might not as much. But, you get to fight Croco again, which is always a perk. You get to navigate the weird and unique enemies in there. Music's good, as always. Maybe I shouldn't use music as an example, because for the most part, it's all going to be good. There's just some that are exemplary, like your Bowser fight, your Croco fight. I'm assuming the Johnny fight has good music as well, but he's up here for other reasons. Johnny might be my favorite character in the whole game. Smithy and my Smithy friend... Actually, we can judge these two separately, I think. We can judge Smithy and, other version of Smithy separately. We're going to come down here, though, and make sure that there's not a weird name. No, just Smithy second time. So, this version of Smithy... When you think you finished it off and you defeat this guy and then you get put up against second form Smithy, that's a great moment. But this version of Smithy, again, I enjoy farther than I enjoy the other forms. And of course, he's like the big bad, so he should have the best stuff, right? But I'm gonna put him in above average because the gravitas here is huge and the music here is kind of cool as well, and he's an intimidating presence. But I don't think he is exemplary like many of his peers are. I think he's just above average. His final form fight is fun because it's constantly ever changing. It's a long fight. It's a marathon fight. You need Peach for this fight. Honestly, if you don't bring Peach here and you still win, you're probably like a speedrunner or something, just trying to blitz your way through his HP. Because he has phases where he takes more damage, and he has phases where he takes less damage, and he does more damage. Maybe his attacks are harder to dodge. Maybe something like that occurs. Overall, I think this version of the fight is unique in its duration. It's unique in its variety of fight style. So I think we're going to put him into the A tier as well. Coming down here, Valentina, and I'm going to lump Dodo in with it. We're going to include them as one. Maybe that's not fair. Valentina herself, very cool design, very different from anything else that we have seen from a Mario series at that point, and maybe ever still. I wish she would come back in some medium. I wish any of these characters, for the most part, would come back, because most of them have never seen the light of day again. But Valentina and the Dodo fight, it's so cool when he takes away Bowser, and there's like two separate fights happening, and then Valentina herself is an interesting fight. The Dodo, it cuts back and forth. I love whenever they add some kind of like a cinematography kind of bonus effect, like a cutting to another fight type of deal. And then the progress all carries over, and eventually Dodo's like, you know what? We're going back to the fight, and Bowser returns, and he's like, all right, let's do this. There's just something so palpable about it. It's awesome. It's got high gravitas. S tier for Valentina in the Dodo fight. Music again is great. The Cloud City is great. There's so much good stuff going on there. The Mallow backstory, the being a statue, the evading the Dodo himself whenever he's pecking at the statues, the oh man, the suspense of him coming by and the and he's like or he ignores you and moves on. Oh my Lanta. It's so good. S tier, also one of my favorite battles of all time in any game, really. What is your name? You have a weird name as well, sir. You are Yuridovich. Might have said that wrong too. Yuridovich. This guy is interesting because he clones himself, and one of them isn't real, one of them is. You'll find out pretty quickly because one takes like a very, very reduced amount of damage or something, or one takes like way more damage. The fake either takes way more or way less damage. It's pretty quick that you can tell. I also think that there's ways to reveal them a little more reliably, but I greatly enjoy this fight. His attacks are cool. He's hard to fight, really. He's kind of difficult. His boss mechanics are fun. His music is fun. The atmosphere in which you fight him is interesting. I like the idea of the clones in this instance. I usually don't like that mechanic where they clone themselves, but I greatly enjoy this fight, and I enjoy the circumstances in which it occurs. So I'm also going to put Yuridovich into the S tier as well. Now, looking at our list here, I think this list is very strong. This might be the most top-heavy list if you consider the fact that, you know, if you're just looking at it like this, you're like, oh, this list, it follows like a perfect bell curve. But we're just going to pretend these two don't exist. So just pretend that F tier and above is all you see here. There's no characters that I've placed in F tier. There's not a single character in the game that I deem unfair. There's not a single character in the game that I think their design is patently ridiculous. Well, they're ridiculous, but in a great way. I don't think that there's any example of the music being poor. You know, there's no one that belongs in this bottom tier. So instantly, the bell curve kind of takes a sharp drop there after the D tier. No one, in my estimation, is deserving of that ranking in this game. The D tier is inhabited pretty strongly by 3 people that, in my estimation, maybe could even go into the don't know, don't remember camp. And if we do that, then I think that we're left with a pretty fair list overall. And again, it kind of kills the curve a little here. But I think that even if I remembered the exact fight mechanics of these guys, I would probably still kind of put them in this range because they're same old, same old. Not that much to be derivative from them that I find that interesting. So we're going to put them right where they are. We're going to leave them there. Birdo, I think, despite her coolness existing and despite the cool aesthetics of the fight itself, I don't think it gets to elevate. All of these guys here, I think, are pretty fair. They are all engaging, have good music, have fun atmospheres, but they just aren't on the level of their peers who are just absolute standouts, not only in the game itself, but in the RPG field in general. Over here, we got the Mad Adder, whose name alone is worthy of S tier coverage, but just because it itself has no additional dialogue or anything of the sort, because he's a robot, right, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, you've got your stuff like that. You've got your kind of offbeat characters like your Kulex that you don't even have to fight. You've got your interesting and design characters like your Piranha, your Smithy, your Mac, your Countdown, your Kulex. Characters that are interesting in design and interesting in their locations, but they don't quite stand out. They're not good all around. That's where you're getting into your good all around people up here. And honestly, looking at this, I'm almost tempted to put Boyer. Boyer's gonna go S tier. Boyer's going to the top. I can already tell you that. Looking at everyone that's here, this is the highest amount of S tier characters I've ever made on one of my lists. Looking at the rest of them here, Axum Rangers, I'm not that far off from putting them S tier because I think they are better than most of the people on this list, particularly our Smithy fight here. Just because of how interesting he is, and just because it is the final fight, he gets elevated because of that. Maybe that's not fair, but that's how we're going to look at it. The Axum Rangers, and even him. You know what? I think it's perfectly fair where it is. I think all of these guys absolutely stand out, and they're mechanically unique for the most part. Our tippity top tier are our guys that not only have great music, they have great character development. They have very interesting boss fight mechanics that are unique to them, and not only the game, but really the genre in general doesn't always do this kind of stuff, and it's very interesting. These guys were trailblazers. They introduced this kind of stuff that was great then and hasn't even been replicated since, and this is an old game. Been out a long time. Bowser is incredible in this game. He has some of the funnest attacks as a party member in the whole game. He's tanky. He does high damage. His dialogue is hilarious. Everything's to like about him. Croco, absolute classic of an old school Mario, like mini recurring boss. His music is great. He has funny dialogue. His interactions with you are fun. You have to try to race him down. It's also engaging and a good time. Deserving of S tier. Johnny, one of my favorite bosses ever. Anytime that you have a boss that actually has a mutual respect for you, I enjoy that a great deal. He's chivalrous. He is respectful of you, like I've said. He's a fun boss fight. He engages in a 1v1, has his own unique properties in that regard. I would elevate him to, like, perhaps above any other. If there was an SS tier, Johnny might occupy it alone, and these guys would just exist in the S tier. Johnny is my absolute favorite. The Valentina fight is close behind it, though. It would be pretty much the top of the next tier. The Valentina fight is exemplary. It exudes a new mechanic. It separates your party into two separate fights. That's always just a good thing on its own right. I didn't even discuss her attack patterns because honestly, they're good, but they're not the absolute best out of all the boss mechanics in terms of combat, but just the aesthetics, the fun area that the fight takes place in, the interesting mechanic of splitting up your parties. It's all so well done, and her dynamic with the dodo is fun as well, of her basically being like the smart one, him being the dumb one. It's all very enjoyable. S tier for them as well. Ridovich, just a fun battle to, like, you didn't even expect the battle to happen really. So that's always a cool thing whenever you just get side hit by a great battle. It has a fun mechanic of splitting into clones, and each clone can attack you independently, so you do want to get rid of the clone. But he's just a fun aesthetic, and it's cool. You're basically fighting over a canyon, so it feels very cool in general, this fight. So I'm going to put him in S tier as well. Boyer initially had A tier, but the music is so good. The mechanics of splitting off your buttons and barring them from use. The cinematography of Gino making his way up the... No, Gino... I'm sorry, I mixed up the mechanics of this. Gino is fighting alone, right? And you guys are the ones that come to his aid. Right? Isn't that how that works out? I think that's actually how that works out. Either way, that is extremely cool that it becomes like people coming to the rescue and to make the fight more fair and even. Yeah, I think Gino's fighting alone briefly, and you guys come to his help, you and Mallow. So never mind, yeah. That's even cooler in my estimation. Like, you're both like, we gotta get there, we gotta help this guy win this fight. We don't even know who he is, we've just been following him. You go and you help him, the boss mechanics are fun, he's fun. His design is a little over the top and a little weird, but it's also, it's also interesting. He's very interesting, that's one word for it. But overall, if you've never played Super Mario RPG and you've only watched people play it, I honestly would recommend it, even if you know everything that's going to happen to you in the game. I would recommend it highly. I recommend grinding out levels. It's fun to even grind out levels. You've got like your fun level up stuff, your awesome items, your one-ups, your equipment. This game has equipment, which is not something common to Mario games. It has different weapons for different people. It has skills. It has kind of synergistic combinations of people existing. The music is just the absolute example of the topmost music in any RPG or even game ever made. There's so much to love about this game. I would recommend you go out and play it yourself if you have access to an emulator, or, I mean, if you have access to an actual Super Nintendo and a cartridge, which is hard to come by without dropping some serious money. I would recommend you do so. This game is highly worth your time. This has been a love letter to a great game. Let me know down in the comments below who your favorite Super Mario RPG character is and what your favorite music and fights are. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what other videos you want me to do in the future. Maybe I can find some other way to squeeze in content for this game because I love it so much. But with that being said, guys, just stay safe out there during these trying times, and I will see you all in the next video. See ya!